Hey, welcome back to another case study of orbital progressions. And for this one, we are going to be looking at Dana Owens, aka Queen Latifa's chart. And the events in her life that we'll be looking at are the debut of her first album, and then an Oscar nomination and surgery and an arrest. And then the final one we'll look at is for her Lifetime Achievement Award and a baby. Alrighty, so let's get rolling with this first chart. And so this chart is for the debut of her first album, All Hail the Queen. And really, I mean, right out the gate, everybody loved Queen Latifah. And when we look at her chart, we can see why, right? So if we come and we look at her first house and we see OP Venus at 11 degrees, right? And of course, remember, anytime I say OP, I'm talking about the orbitally progressed. Hold on, my dog is needing out. Pause. Okay, so back to the chart. So this orbitally progressed Venus at 11 degrees in her first house. Of course, Venus is in rulership in Taurus. And this was conjunct her ascendant, natal Mars, and natal Saturn, which of course is one of the co-rulers of her career house, right? And this OP Venus was actually in an exact trine with transiting Saturn, which we can see at 11 degrees in her ninth house. And so, all of those nice aspects to Saturn, what a lovely way to kick off a career, right? And, also there was this transiting Neptune that was trining Venus in her first, the OP Venus in her first as well, right? All right, so let's see, what else can we see with this OP Venus? It was sextile. Let's see, what was this? It was sextile her natal Juno. And this is where she actually partnered with Tommy Boy Records, right? And actually, this trine that, this first house, ninth house trine is actually doing a little foreshadowing, because this album would be inducted into the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry. And it was inducted because of its cultural, historical, and aesthetic importance in the nation's recorded sound heritage. And it showed that rap could cross genres, including reggae, hip hop, house, and jazz, right? And we also can see that OP Venus is sextiling her natal nodes as well, right? Indicating a change. So now we can let's take a look at OP Mercury for a second. And that's at 13 degrees of her second house. And it was in a sextile with her progressed sun. And it was trining the OP part of fortune that was in her sixth house. And it was trining her vertex too, right? A destiny point, we would say. Plus, It was, let's see. Also, this OP Mercury was sextile trining the transiting nodes that were on the 10th house, 4th house axis. All right, and then we can look at OP Mars, which was being triggered by transiting Pluto and Mars across the chart. And, we have to note that Mars is the ruler of her 12th, right? Um, which, of course, we see in performing careers, right? Film, music industry, things like that. And OP Mars was also squaring the OP nodes and the transiting nodes. And this actually was, really a breakthrough moment that ultimately allowed her to rise above the poverty that she knew growing up, right? Um, and she grew up in the projects and actually had a pretty challenging childhood. So let's go to the next chart. And so, what we're going to be looking at here is her Oscar nomination, surgery, and arrest, right? Some years are just loaded, aren't they? So, the date of this chart is the date for the Academy Awards show. And at that show, she was nominated for her character in Chicago, who was a corrupt, powerful, but kind of nurturing overseer of the Cook County Jail's women's ward, right? So, what do we see with the orbital progressions that would speak to this? We can see that her OP Mercury at 4 degrees in her 4th house of Leo, right? Leo's acting, performing. Mercury actually rules her 5th house, which is the traditional house of drama and theatrical performance. And so that was on the nodal axis of the OP nodes. And it was being trined by the transiting sun, right? And the sun is an award, right? You're in the spotlight. Let's see what else. Oh, and we could say actually that it was a grand trine because it was also trining her natal Neptune, right? And that rules her 11th house, actually. So her audience and things like that. So yeah, so that, makes a little bit of a kite with all of those things. And then also we can see that actually transiting Neptune was in the 10th as well, right? Across from that OP Mercury. Let's see. And, if we think about the trine being in the 4th house, 8th house, 12th house, well, it actually is kind of reflective of the character that she was playing, right? Who was running basically like the jail and where everyone was incarcerated. So we can also look at OP Mars, which is at 25 degrees in her 1st house. And that was in an exact trine with her natal MC that was at 25 degrees in her 9th house, right? Or is. And let's see what else. That actually was a grand trine, if we're looking at that, because it was sextile her natal Pluto as well, right? So that was completing a circuit where she was being really recognized for everything that she created throughout her career. Um, and let's see what else. And that Mars was also actually sextile her natal sun as well. As we can see, that is at 27 degrees in her 11th house, right? So let's look at OP Venus. And OP Venus at 1 degree in her second house of Gemini is involved in a basket, right? So it's across from that natal Neptune, and it is sextiling OP Mercury at 4 degrees in her fourth house, and sextiling slash trining the orbital progressed nodes as well. And it was trine the natal Venus, right? So there's the fourth component of the basket. So yes, so that was creating a hum in the chart at the time. And now let's look at the OP part of fortune. And remember, just at a super basic, what you value, what you're valued for, right? And so that was trining her Pallas Athena, her natal Pallas Athena. And that is in the 10th house, right? And she was a trendsetter. She actually, which we'll talk about in the next slide, she spoke out for women's rights, peace in peaceful situations for women in general, new concepts, trying new things, like we mentioned before, how she crossed rap with so many other genres. So this really makes a lot of sense. And she also made a comment that she was surprised how after this nomination, she started to have so many opportunities coming her way from it, right? Okay, so now we're going to shift and we're going to look at the orbital progressions and how they speak to her surgery this year, within not this year, but 2020, 2002, sorry. So she had breast reduction surgery, right? And if we look at her chart, we can see that the OP moon at 9 degrees in her fifth house was conjunct her natal south node, right? And then, actually, if we go to her fourth house, we can see that the OP south node was conjunct her natal moon, right? So there was a little play off of those two where they're insinuating like the same result, right? Lessening breast tissue, basically. And, she also was having the procedure because of shoulder pain, right? To heal that shoulder pain. And we can note that her OP Mercury was actually, what was it doing? Let me see. This was trining her natal Chiron, right? So she was having a surgery for a healing purpose. And it was sextile her natal Hygeia, another asteroid that's an indicator for health and well-being, which was at 6 degrees, or is at 6 degrees in her second house, right? And, actually, if we look at this OP Mercury, we could say that it is squaring Saturn. See that it's squaring Saturn and squaring Mars. And, actually, she made the comment that this surgery, while she was like wanting a breast reduction because of the ill effects of having too much, but she said this surgery actually took away more than she wanted to, right? So she wasn't planning on downsizing that much, but it just happened to happen. And she's like, here I am. What else was going on? That OP Mercury was trining that natal Neptune that is in the eighth house. And of course, we know the eighth house is surgeries, and Neptune can be hospital stays. And then we can also look at this OP Mars at 25 degrees in her first house. And that was trine her natal Pluto, right? So both Mars and Pluto surgery. And it was also that OP Mars was sextile her natal sun, which is in Pisces, another sign of hospitals. Okay, so OP Hygeia. Side note, this is not the Hygeia glyph. I couldn't actually find it in Canva. And so I just opted for a capital H to represent it. Another side note with Canva, in present and record, I cannot use the magic cursor. I hope that they change that soon because it's really best for me to be able to point out with the cursor, but we just have to use our brains to follow along for now. So anyway, back to the chart. So we have this capital H representing Hygeia, and that was exactly squaring her natal nodes, and OP moon at the time, right? So now let's shift to the arrest that happened. So the arrest was for driving under the influence. And so we're going to come back to the OP nodes, right? That Mercury, right, is conjunct and down in this fourth house. So Mercury driving, right? And it happens to be being opposed by transiting Neptune in the 10th, right? So driving under the influence. And actually, we can add to that because that spectrum is being squared by Jupiter, that her natal Jupiter that's in Scorpio, and her natal Saturn and Mars, right, in the first. So that tend to be proved to be a challenging transit. Yeah. So let's go ahead and move to the final chart we're going to look at in this episode. And so now what we have is a Lifetime Achievement Award and welcoming her son, right? So let's see. The chart is set for the day she received the award. And we can see that the progressed sun, and again, reminder, the progressed sun is the same in orbital progressions and secondary progressions. So this progressed sun is conjunct her ascendant, right? And it is also conjunct or transiting Uranus is conjunct her progressed sun. And this progressed sun is also sextiling, trining the orbital progressed nodes. And was also sextile her natal Mercury in the 11th. And let's see, is there anything else? I think that is good. We can note that, of course, that transiting Uranus comes into play because it is the ruler of her 10th. So she was being honored for being a pioneer, and one of the first successful rappers to cross into acting, right? So she was applauded for using her platform to combat violence in women for decades. So let's look at what is indicative of that in the chart. And if we go to her OP moon, right, at 28 degrees in that fifth house, it's exactly conjunct Pluto. Oh no, sorry. That we're going to come back to that. It's just conjunct Pluto, not an exact at this time. And let's see what else. That OP moon is also being shined upon from her natal sun, that is across the chart at 27 degrees in Pisces. And this OP moon is trining her MC at 25 degrees in her ninth. We have OP moon. Oh, no, we have OP Mars, right? And that is sextile her natal moon. And let's see what else. We have OP Mercury at 24 degrees in her sixth house. And that is exactly trining Pallas, her natal Pallas. Again, representing that breaking through, bringing new concepts, things like that, right? In the 10th. Let's see, what else? Her OP Mars is in a grand trine with her natal Uranus, ruler of her 10th. And with transiting Saturn in her 10th as well. And this OP Mars was sextile her Venus and Chiron in the 12th, right? So it makes sense. And this OP Venus is sextile her natal Saturn, right? Career, lifetime achievements, and Mars in her first. And it is involved. So, this orbitally progressed Venus at 2 degrees in her third house is in a grand trine with her natal Jupiter and then transiting Jupiter in the 11th. And, actually, philanthropy was another thing mentioned when she got her Lifetime Achievement Award, because apparently that's been a big part of her world as well. And we can see that the OP nodes are conjunct her natal MC at the time, and those are being trined by transiting Neptune in her 11th. She was being valued for career achievements, and we have her OP part of fortune that is across from the progressed sun, right? Let's see. Anything else with that? Transiting Uranus was also across from it as well. So, yeah. So now let's shift and think of her and her partner welcoming a baby, right? And this was actually about a year and a half, like almost a half before this award, but it's close enough that we can still see the OP planet's relevancy here, right? So if we look at her orbitally progressed series, that's at 0 degrees Aries, which of course Aries is fertility. And it is in an opposition with the OP moon. And at the time, this OP moon was actually exactly conjunct Pluto in the fifth, right? In the house of children. What else do we got? We got OP Mars here at 5 degrees, right? In her second house, which was conjunct this Hygeia, her natal Hygeia, and sextiling Uranus. So you're wondering like, I wonder like health wise if anything came up, or like maybe with her partner, who knows? But we can see that this OP Mars was sextile OP Ceres. And if we rewound the transiting clock, then we would see that at the time he was born, transit Jupiter was actually trining her OP Mars from the 10th. And let's see. Also, we have OP Mercury at the time, and that happens to be the ruler of her fifth, right? Children. That was, what was that doing? Oh, so if we were to just rewind to the year before, that OP Mercury would have been in an exact square with the orbitally progressed nodes. And we can also, the last thing that we can note is that the eclipse that happened right before they got pregnant was at 5 degrees of Sagittarius. And that was forming a kite with her OP series, or that like would make a kite if we were looking at it all together, right? With OP series and OP Mars and her natal moon, right? Alrighty, so that's it. Thanks for joining me for this episode, and I'll see you next time. Take care.